chirp.
My name is Rob Salkowitz. I teach visual storytelling at University of Washington. Go Dogs. I also write about the business of pop culture for Forbes. And when I write about all of the stuff that's taking place in the world of entertainment, movies and TV, video games, publishing, comics, even marketing and advertising, so much of the spectacular imagery that captures our imagination comes out of the imagination of these incredible artists. And you know, it all comes down to that particular process of sort of thinking through what is the story behind this artwork and how do we imagine that on screen or on paper in ways that are both believable and beautiful. I am joined by a group of 4 fantastic illustrators here who, if you're like me and you look at their books, at their works on screen, at their Instagram, and you see these pieces and you think, my God, how did they do this, right? Well, for the next hour, we're going to find out. So let's have our artists just briefly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your approach to Illustrator. Means a lot of different things in different ways. So let's start with Devin, and just go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about the kind of work that you do.
All right, hi guys, happy to be here.
Devin Elle Kurtz.
So I do a lot of fantasy illustration. I do a lot of stuff with the ocean and dragons. I illustrate for books. I worked in the animation industry for 4 years. I've done concept art for games, movies, TV shows. I also sell my own art at conventions, so you guys may have seen me around at Anime Expo or one of those. Yeah, that's about it.
Cool. To her left, Lois von Barl, also known as Loish. Tell us a little about yourself and your work for the 3 people in the audience who may not know already.
Hi, I'm Loish, and I've always been making, I guess, so what I see myself as somebody who likes to make drawings. So the official term that I've attached to that is being an illustrator, but essentially, like, I just love making digital paintings, and I've been doing that for a very long time, and posting that on social media consistently for a really long time as well. So I consider myself, I guess, a social media artist. But in the end, I'm just somebody who draws pictures, so that's how I see myself.
Next to her, Eliza Ivanova. Tell us a little about yourself and your work.
Hi, I'm Eliza. I'm an illustrator as well, fine artist and animator. I used to work at Pixar, and I made the switch to fine arts and illustration back in 2019, pre-COVID. I didn't know COVID was coming, but I'm here still, and so that's great. And I love story-based art. That's why I think illustration really appealed to me, and why I call myself an illustrator. Thank you.
And finally, Craig Mullins.
Hi, my name is Craig Mullins. I've been an illustrator for about 30 years now. I kind of look at artwork and illustration as a language that's the very beginning of my curiosity about so many things, the way the world works and fits together. So that my interest it begins with the art, but it is also an interest in the sensual nature of the world, as like you might read a history of the Byzantine empires, like the image that I have here, but what did it feel like to actually stand there and watch some guy in robes address 1 million people? What did that feel like? And to me, that's really what illustration can do. It can compress so much time into a small space. And so it's really a fascinating endeavor.
So that point that Craig just made, so when we think about like a medium like comics, for example, so comics is a series of images that tell a story. But illustration is, sorry, trying to figure out my clicker here. Oh, it's the big green arrow. Sorry. So illustration is one image that tells a story. And for that to be effective, the people making the illustration need to fundamentally be storytellers first before they apply their craft and before they apply the finish and all of the rendering to that image. So what I would like to do for the next 10 or 15 minutes is we have an image from each of these fantastic illustrators, and I'm going to ask you guys to tell the story behind that image. What is the story that you were trying to tell with this? And tell us a little bit about the process of how you approach that, and even some of the technical details if you do thumbnails or if you do, what is part of your workflow and process to get from here's the story I want to tell to what that image is going to look like at the end of the day. So let's start with Loish.
Oh, yeah, okay. So for me, this is an illustration that I created this year, and I think it's a really good example of how, for me, illustration is a way to tell an emotional story. So for me, emotion plays a huge role in my work because I started making these kind of digital paintings in a time where I was looking for an escape for a lot of the struggles in my life. So I was a teenager and, under a lot of pressure from school, and there were a lot of things that I didn't like in my life, and making illustrations was like a soothing activity for me. And when I was younger, I felt like I was put under pressure to do a lot of things, and this was like painting, and digital painting was something that I chose to do. And it was a way that I could soothe myself and escape from the pressures of life. So that always kind of shaped my storytelling process, but not in a conscious way. Not like, oh, I want to tell a story about a mood or an emotion that I have, but much more like I just had an intuitive drawing process, or I developed an intuitive drawing process that allowed me to just channel my own needs into my work. And because I work digitally, I can kind of like adjust as I go, right? So I can adjust the colors, I can change things, like transform it constantly. I don't have to commit to anything because you can always go back and forth. And that's what allowed it to be a very intuitive medium for me. And I think this painting up here is like a strong example of how, like, I like to make illustrations that are kind of like a reflection of a certain like emotional moment that can mean different things to different people, but it feels right to me at the moment that I make it. And then I find that it resonates with people once it's done.
Do you just start in the morning and have a plan for something that you're going to do? Do you have a palette in mind? Do you have like a character or a scenario? You just kind of let the work form?
Yeah, usually I just start with a rough sketch, and I don't really know what it's going to be. So I just put something down, and then there's something in the sketch that I like, and then I kind of expand on what works, and then I add some colors to it, and then lean into what works there, and then the painting comes out by the end.
Very cool. Take a minute to enjoy, like, all of these artists, their work is so evocative, and it's like if you see their work once, you'll know forever that's their work. Next we have Eliza. Wow.
Okay. So the hardest part is talking about the art. I kind of, to piggyback on what you're saying, a lot of emotion is definitely, it's definitely the key, or I guess the seed where the artwork starts from. I usually like to have an idea that I can like thumbnail a bunch of times. I don't as confidently as you do. In this case, I wanted to create kind of a mermaid-like creature, but more not mermaid, more of an oceanid, just some being that lives in the ocean, solitary. Again, as a form of escape, almost like, here's my solitude. This is what I was trying to evoke with this piece. for some reason, masks have been reoccurring in my work lately. I think I see the mask not so much as cover, but more like a shield. I think that's why you would see masks here and there, even in the other piece that I have. I don't know if we're going to showcase those. That's a very much kind of a similar, it has a similar character vibe. And,
now, both of these, Loish and Eliza, are works that you originated from yourself.
Correct.
So, Eliza, you also do project work from time to time. How does your conceptual process differ on a professional job where you're kind of given a set of parameters rather than just starting from scratch like that?
I feel like with social media, I've been fortunate enough where people resonate with what I do on my own, like my own personal art and sketches, and kind of literally anything I put online is it's kind of my, almost like a art diary that's very public. And people respond to my work, and I'm happy that they do, because when I get professional work commissioned, usually it's people are seeking that personal approach, and I'm happy that they do. Only a few times has happened where, you know, people will approach me and be like, can you also do this to look like something else? And it's, I've done it, it's hard, but you know, sometimes you have to do things like that. But for the most part, it's kind of a blend between my own design sense and then the client's whatever they want.
Do you find it as satisfying, and this is for either of you, to do work that has some structure and some constraints to it, as opposed to just having a complete...
Yeah, it's wonderful. Any kind of limitation actually helps me as like a grounding point. I take it and go. If it's too open-ended, it becomes, I don't know, I'm stuck. I don't know where to start, it's confusing. So I actually feed off of feedback very well, and I appreciate it and look forward to it. Sometimes art directors are like, no, do your thing. I'm like, no, please tell me what you need, because that really helps.
I feel that way a lot.
In the end, it ends up being a collaboration that I think works for everybody. So.
Very cool. So, Devin, you have a different model and a different approach. Tell us a little about this work, where it came from.
Yeah, all right. So I worked in animation for 4 years before I left to go do my own thing. I always do my own thing while I was working in animation, but I've always loved motion and energy and action, and I very much think in motion. Like when I think in storytelling, I think in motion. So I chose this piece because I really wanted to express a whole scene happening in motion, but in one illustration, which presents a unique challenge. I've really gotten into doing these wide format pieces because they let you do so much storytelling. It's kind of like a big pan shot, like when you're working in the animation industry, the camera's panning along it and you can show a bunch of stuff. But more than that, I wanted to show in this scene, this girl is freeing these trapped spirits from the ocean. It's from a project of mine, and I wanted to show the spirits breaking out of the ocean and really feel like they're flying through the canvas. So I composed them in a way that kind of winds your eye through the piece. That's something I just love that about illustration. I love being able to capture a whole moment in one instant, but still have it feel I think Craig was talking about how it feels versus how it looks. I love painting how it feels. I want the colors to feel how it feels to be there, not what it would really look like to be at the ocean at night with some lights. The lighting is very staged. The lighting above the girl, I don't know that that's anything what it would look like in life. It's like stage lights. I think of it more like what's in the back of the stage, the middle of the stage, and the front of the stage, and how I can use light to spotlight the parts that I want people to focus on and hide the parts that I don't. I don't know where I was going with that, but that's why I picked that piece. It means a lot to me because it was the first time that I feel like I really captured what I saw in my brain with this project, with this character. Yeah.
When you're doing a piece like this, what stage in terms of the development and the process, do you do a thumbnail first? Do you do value studies? Do you pick your palette? What sequence do those decisions come for you?
Yeah, so anyone who follows me on Instagram knows I follow a pretty segmented process, and I actually have like 30 processes like saved out in my Instagram highlights if anyone wants to see it in more detail. But I do thumbnailing first, and then I do like a full drawing, and I do like usually a full value study, a full color study, because I feel like I improve it each time. Like by drawing kind of the same thing over and over again, I don't paint on top of it. Like I'll do a color study and then I'll start completely fresh in a new canvas, and it lets me segment out the process first. So first I only need to think about composition, then I only need to think about color, and then later when I'm painting the final version, I only need to think about mark making and the exact shape of each thing. It helps me not feel like I need to do everything at once. It's kind of like, if you're practicing guitar, you can practice chords and you can practice, strumming. Like you don't need to practice everything simultaneously. I find that breaking it out helps it be a lot more approachable, and it helps me turn off that voice in the back of my head saying, "You can't do it, Devin."
Relatable.
Break it down into bite-sized nuggets, and then
Yep.
you can do the whole thing.
Exactly.
And then finally, Craig, I think this size and resolution is probably just enough to appreciate the detail that's in this piece. Tell us a little about the story behind this.
The subject?
The subject and the I guess the story that you were trying to tell with this illustration.
Oh, okay. This was done for a game, Tencent's Age of Empires Mobile, and it was ultimately not used. They decided to go with 3D and photography, so that kind of bummed me out a little bit because I did work hard on this. So not a lot is known about the Byzantine Empire, at least publicly. I mean, a ton is known about it, but it was essentially the Eastern Roman Empire. These guys would say they are Romans, and I've always had a fascination with that. So to expand on what I was saying in my introduction is art and illustration is kind of a conduit, a language to see what I feel about the world and feel I do mean. There was a book maybe 15 years ago called Sergeant the Sensualist, and this is well after I was an illustrator, but the thesis of the book was just as a human being and how Sargent saw things, and the feel of fabric, the feel of something was very, very important to him. So you could almost look at it like my work is the inversion of a black box theater, whereas a black box theater you have two people talking, the idea starts to build a reality in your own head and you don't even notice it's black back there. But the way I do it is, no, I want there to be color and light, and I want that to make you feel like you're really there. I mean, how many times have you seen something, a sunset in the real world, that you take a picture of it, and my mom and dad took hundreds of slides in the 70s, sunset after sunset after sunset. The only ones you care about are the ones of the people, but there's just no way of capturing the sensual nature of our experiences in the world. And I think that illustration has some ability to do that with paint because of the physical quality of the paint and the textures and how it can both represent 3D space, but also the materials that, like clothing that you would actually wear. There is some storytelling going on, and you can see there's two figures in the far left. That's Theodora, his wife, who is an incredible person in her own right. And a lady in waiting over there, a lot of detail went into that. But it's pretty accurate in terms of what Constantinople looked like at that time. The height is a little bit exaggerated. It wasn't quite that high. But anyway, this is way contrastier than the original. The original is maybe 15,000 pixels. There's a lot of detail in it. And my process is intentionally very chaotic. If I have a set period of time, like let's say 6 weeks from assignment to completion, I know exactly how much time it's going to take for me to execute. And so let's say it takes a week. So that means I have 5 weeks to fail and make mistakes over and over, because the more I draw the subjects, the more I become familiar with it, I can design something that is simpler, better, stronger, tells a better story, tells, it just works better. And the key to be able to do that is to not fall in love with what you do first. A lot of times when you're a beginning illustrator, oh, I've delineated something, it looks real. Oh yeah, we're done. I'm not going to screw around with it anymore. But of course with digital, that habit is meaningless because you can do branching and anything with it, but you do have to get your early successes out of your head to continue to be able to discard what you've done and make it simpler, cleaner, stronger, better. Because at 2 weeks you have to execute it, but you have this time in the beginning where you can design it. And that's where the strength of the image will either be made or not made. And how many times have I done an illustration and then 2 months later I said, oh my God, I sketched, that would have been so much better. And I don't want to have that to happen. I want that to happen as seldom as possible. So I'm using a lot of time in the beginning breaking things. I work procedurally a lot. I let the canvas talk to me and I talk to it. It's a talking back and forth. So it's a process where I'm always trying to break things. And I want the process to go out like this. I don't want to say, oh, well, I do this first and then I do this and this. So it's different than the traditional method. It is chaotic. It does cause anxiety. But when you have enough experience and confidence with your ability to delineate, you can deal with that anxiety a little bit better. So anyway.
That actually leads into a great question. We're going to transition away from this into a slideshow that showcases all of these folks' beautiful work. And you're just going to kind of run behind us while we're doing this. But Eliza, what Craig was talking about was, like this multi-step process, some parts of which are more daunting than others. What part of the process is the toughest for you? Is there a particular piece that consistently you're like, now I have to do this? And if so, how do you get past that and make that, get into the parts that are more rewarding to you creatively?
Yeah, I think the hardest for me usually is the very beginning, the figuring out what speaks to me the most in terms of visual impact. I usually work through many thumbnails or variations of the same drawing, kind of like how you're talking about. You just try stuff, see if it works. I'm very particular about silhouette and making sure things read clearly. That's, I think, just something I picked from animation, and I'm very thankful for because it's such a powerful tool for just communication, but kind of immediate. That's the hardest, is just picking that image that really captures the nuances, obviously the main theme of whatever I'm doing, but also just like kind of have that nuanced feel of what's going on. Like it's something that draws you in. I cannot really tell how that you land on that. It's just intuitive a lot of times, but I think with practice it becomes more frequent than not.
How about you, Loish? Do you have the...
Yeah, I think for me, the thing, so I've kind of figured out a pretty efficient workflow because I used to hate drawing line art, like neat lines. That was just my least favorite part. It always felt so tedious. And I always liked my sketch better, so I just stopped doing line art. I just go from sketch to color. And setting up like my initial sketch and going straight to color, like I always feel like I'm in a good flow and I'm like, yes, okay, this is working, this is cool. And then as soon as I have to like elevate it, so go from like this rough version that looks okay if you squint your eyes to like the more elevated version, I almost always find, that I fall into like these kind of ingrained habits that aren't necessarily helping the drawing. So I kind of, because I learned how to draw from copying pictures. So at a young age. So when I was 8 years old, I would do these art classes where I would get a photo and copy it. And because of that, I have this mode that I call the human printer mode, where you just start kind of like going through the motions. And if I have reference material, just copying the reference material. And then I look at my drawing like 10 minutes later and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's getting worse. Like if I go back to my rough version, it looks way better than this version. So I usually, because I work digitally, I try out a couple of different approaches and I have to go back and kind of start over. And I really hate going back because it feels like lost time. but it is essential to get a good end product, to stay super critical throughout like the parts of the process where you go into automatic modes. And that's always the biggest challenge for me.
Do you do one thing at a, like one piece at a time, or do you have a couple going and that you kind of alternate between them if you hit a block?
Yeah, when it comes to like more detailed paintings, I usually have a couple that I'm working on at the same time, so that if I find that I'm getting stuck or it's not working out, that I can kind of switch it up. But I also do a lot of like quicker works where I just spend like maybe 3 to 4 hours on something, and those are the ones where I kind of see that as my training ground for learning techniques that can help me make my paintings better. Because especially when I make more detailed paintings, that's when the automatic habits and the human printer mode really interfere with a good outcome, you know? So I have to practice regularly to stay kind of critical of those habits.
And Devin, sort of a variation of the same question, is there a part of the process that you love so much that you kind of like are waiting, or hurrying through other things to get to that part because it's so rewarding, and how do you resist that? How do you pace yourself to make sure you take care of the necessary stuff first?
Oh man, for me, like the most fun part of the process is like the idea generation and like the stage where I'm coming up with the final thumbnail. And then the rest of the process is kind of like a rest period for me, where I like watch like movies and TV shows while I'm essentially just like remaking the finished color thumbnail, but like in painting form. But I really appreciate both parts of the process because like I also love my time where I get to like watch my favorite TV show and just draw, or just paint really. But I would say the parts that I tend to rush through are the middle between coming up with the idea and getting it ready to paint. Like sometimes I'm so excited by the idea that I skip some steps in the middle and then I end up having to go back. So like what you were saying, Loish, like makes a lot of sense, where sometimes I do need to be like, oh, I didn't totally figure this out. Like this is not reading very well. This silhouette is not silhouetting the way that I wanted it to. And I have to go back and like rework the thumbnail. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll just take a screenshot of where the painting is at and then really roughly like paint directly on top of it to like fix the problems. Or even if it's late at night and I'm getting frustrated, I'll just write notes to myself right on my canvas on another layer to fix later. Yeah.
Working through the problems is 90% of the job, I think.
Yeah.
So to shift gears a little bit, so all of you are illustrators fundamentally in the way that you approach what you're doing, but you all have slightly different commercial models. And I'll start with Craig and tell us a little bit about like how do you get paid? Like what you do projects, you have clients, you're in a pretty classic mode for a commercial artist. Talk a little bit about that, how you got started, where you're at right now, that sort of.
Well, it's in a major state of change. I think that my work is a little anachronistic to what's happening in the industry right now. It tends to be a lot more colorful and graphic, and I can work that way, but I don't think a lot of people realize that. And now I'm kind of like at the point where, do you hire Sid Mead to do graphic paintings of anime characters? No, you hire Sid Mead to do Sid Mead. And I think, I'm 60 now, so I think I'm kind of at that point where it's like, well, you hire Craig, you're gonna get a Craig. And so that's not good because I can do a lot of other things. But yeah, I never really had to struggle for work. I was very blessed that at the beginning I was one of the very few people doing this. And it was really a cool time, but a lot of people moved in and prices started to drop because of the greater supply. And but that's exactly as it should be. So people did learn from my work, and I was fascinated to see where they took it. And so I should be retiring now. I really think so, but I can't afford to. So.
Do you do much on the side on terms of commissions or that sort of stuff?
No, not really. No, I've always been an illustrator and concept artist. But now, it probably makes more sense to design stuff in 3D because it's going to be done in 3D anyway.
So Loish, you have a different you have a different commercial model than that. You say you don't do a lot of project work. You do your own stuff, and then what is your commercial model for how you make a living as an illustrator?
So for a while, I also did concept art and especially character design. So I did a lot of character design work for primarily female characters, which was a thing that when I was in animation school, I didn't know that was really an option. But then after graduating animation school, there were all these new cool games and projects with female leads being developed that I managed to find work in. And I really enjoyed doing concept art, but I found that like the majority of what I was creating disappeared into a vault. So a lot of it was under NDA, which means that the full copyright is with the business that you're doing it for, and they often choose not to share all of the development work that has been put into the projects. And for me, sharing my work is just, I found through experience, like if I can't share the work that I make, I feel like it's lost. You know, it's just a kind of feeling of like, especially because I've been sharing my work on social media since I was 15 years old, so it just felt like something disappeared. So because of that, I chose a couple years ago to kind of step away from client work, and now I focus entirely on running a Patreon account where I share, like, because I love teaching and I love talking about the art process, and especially about the psychological aspect of creating art, so like how mental health and art and like kind of anxieties and stuff like that play a role in creating art. And I found like a huge fulfillment from that. So I've shifted my focus to like community building and sharing knowledge and making my own work. Because then I feel like I can, I can share more of what I make with people, which can help people maybe in a way that I needed help when I was first starting out and wanted some guidance. And that feels more fulfilling to me than stuff disappearing into a vault.
So Devin, you have yet another model. You're doing books, among other things. Talk a little about the mix of things that contribute to your professional career.
Yeah, wow, yeah. So I started in the animation industry. Well, not started. I was doing things before that, but I guess I really got my sea legs in being a working artist in the animation industry. And while I was doing that, I built up kind of like similar to what Lois does. Like I have social media, and I sell prints, and I do teaching related things on there. And then separate to that, I have started writing and illustrating children's books. Like my first author illustrator book came out earlier this month, actually. I just got back from book tour, so I'm happy that I made it back here in time, yeah. Which is a really, really different world. Like the world of being an author and the world of being an illustrator are quite different from each other, but it's really fun because it's a whole new world to explore, and it's really cool to bridge that gap and be both, like to be both the author and the illustrator for a book. Because like you said, illustration is storytelling, and to be able to just like sit at home and come up with stories and share them with the world is kind of like a dream come true. So I've really enjoyed it. But I mean, the way that business model works is you get a lump sum up front, which is called an advance. And it's an advance against royalties, which means that you then earn that money. You don't get paid any royalties until you've earned that much in royalties, and then you start getting royalty checks, essentially. So, there are pros and cons to different business models. I will say it's very hard to like get a start in books if you don't have some other income coming in from other things, so I'm lucky in that regard. But it's nice to have different income sources, especially with how unpredictable like everything has been. It's nice that if something goes away, so for example, I make a lot of money at conventions, and in 2020, guess what? You can't do that anymore. So it's nice to have other things that can kind of step forward and to not feel like completely beholden to like one platform or one industry. Yeah.
And finally, Eliza, you not only have an all-of-the-above approach, I think your work touches on all the stuff that's been discussed, and then you also are doing some work in fine art. Can you talk a little bit about the different models and what are some of the important differences between the kind of commercial art we're discussing and the fine art world?
Yeah, I think my financial approach is similar to Devin's. I definitely have multiple things going on. I take commercial work, but limited, and that's mostly because I just don't have the time. I have 2 kids, and that's a lot already on the plate. The way I do it is kind of similar, where you get a lump sum, like a big chunk, especially with books, and you then kind of have the flexibility to figure out how long this will last and then take on other work. But definitely having a passive income has been a blessing because, I mean, it's very unpredictable, especially like now more than ever. Just the art climate is strange, to put it lightly. But I want to say that starting off, so I was an animator before drawing. I went to school for drawing, and then I went into animation for 10 years. So I did 3D animation. I didn't really draw, but sharing online was incredibly therapeutic, but also weirdly like put me on the map in an industry that I was not practicing. Illustration being part of that. I didn't go to school for illustration. I just fell into it, and what I'm trying to say is if you share your work and you're not precious with it, the more you share, the more eyeballs are on it, and that's a good thing. I think being very like protective of your work can sometimes hinder even exposure to potential clients. And it's difficult. I can't imagine what projects would look like if I didn't have a direct contact with clients, if I had to go through agents. But I do work with galleries because fine art is ultimately what I wanted to do even before art school. I went to a very rigorous academic art studio program for, I want to say 5 years, and that was from 12 to 17. So I wanted to be a painter, and I'm slowly kind of going back to that. So it's just one more thing to add to the plate.
So your career is a work of art when you're a professional artist too, apparently. So I'm going to ask these folks one more round of questions about changes in the business, and while they are answering, if you should be thinking of questions. We have mics set up. I think the mic is there. I don't know, I can't see if there's one on the other. But anyway, line up there and we'll take a few audience questions after this next round of stuff. So I do want to talk about, because as all of us are aware, there are big changes in both the business and the technology and all of these things surrounding the kind of art that you guys are doing, whether it's, the dreaded AI, or whether it's just changes in algorithms to the platforms that you guys depend on for, getting those things, to changes in the fundamentals of the entertainment business. What are some of the challenges that are hitting you the hardest, and how are you kind of dealing with it? And let's start with Devin first. And I'm sorry. Are you ready?
Yeah. What's up?
Yeah. Good. It sounds like you're doing all right. Like, are you concerned about any of the stuff that's out there? Are you making a plan for how you're going to deal with?
Oh yeah, I think the thing is because I live in LA and my friends all work in LA, so I'm very aware of how strange and turbulent things are, because it's impacting almost everybody that I know and hang out with. I've been very, very lucky, knock on wood, in that regard. But you shouldn't need to have 800,000 Instagram followers to have a career that feels stable. Anyway, the things that have probably hit me the hardest, though, and I think all of us are on social media to some extent, is just the fact that social media changes every year. The game changes constantly, the algorithms change constantly. The platforms, it's getting harder and harder to be seen on them. You have to work harder to have the same level of eyeballs on your work as you had last year, and it feels like it's continually trending in that direction. There's such an emphasis on short form video rather than still images, which, I enjoy making videos, but it is a whole extra level that adds to things. As for how to prepare for it, I just try to diversify to get myself on every platform, so that if some platform, maybe one with a bird in the icon, starts going the wrong direction, I have other places that I can post my work. But we're all just kind of throwing bets out. Is this going to pay off? Is this going to be worth my time? And my bets have paid back and been lucky, but that could always change. Hopefully, the more that we all kind of share information with each other and keep each other up to date on what's working and which platforms are the ones to be on. Right now, Blue Sky seems like it's really taking off. Who knows though? You never know. But I think to an extent we're all in this together, and the sharing of information helps a lot.
Craig, how about you? You deal at a different side of the business. What are some of the changes you're seeing, and how is that affecting your work, your outlook, where you're going to go for the rest of your career?
I think that the overall business climate and anticipation of recession or depression is driving a lot of very conservative decisions in the entertainment business. So they're laying off a lot of people and pulling in and reducing their exposure quite a bit. And you know, probably everybody in here knows some roadkill, right? So I mean, I haven't had any work in like 6 months, so I'm roadkill too. But there's a lot of reasons for that. I would say you as a younger person, just work on both sides of the equation. I never thought I would have a house or a family, and I thought that my desire to be an artist outweighed that. I was lucky that I was successful enough to have both those things, but you have to ask yourself, you know, are you going to have a life that requires, what, 10 grand a month to support? And that's what a family costs in Los Angeles. You can have both people work or not. So work on the demand side of your life as well, not just making the money, but being careful about the commitments that you make, because that will make you be under the thumb of some unpleasant people, and you'll have to make decisions that you'll probably regret. As far as the business goes, I mean, how could it be more clear? They have said, you know, we will make money from your work, and we will privatize the profits. And they are taking the risks. They are putting out huge amounts of money at high interest rates, and there's no guarantee at all that their movie or product is going to make anything. You are not exposed to that risk, which is why you're not paid anything. So there is a rationale to this. There's a way that the world is working right now. And so I don't really have a negative feeling toward, you know, people in the industry that make these decisions. They're making rational decisions. So I think that work on the demand side of it, and then work on diversifying your income as much as humanly possible. Books, posters, movies, not movies, galleries, selling through social media. Figure out and be as creative with your business side as you are with the art side. And I was never that way. I always had kind of a princely attitude toward about it that I now regret, as in like, oh, well, people come to me. Well, that's bullshit. So, I mean, it worked 30 years ago when I was one of 30 people doing this, but now there's a measurable percentage of the human people on the planet who have accounts on ArtStation. That's quite a bit of competition and downward pressure on prices. You have to really be aware of that, and how to differentiate yourself from the large numbers of people doing this. That you should also be thinking about, and I'm thinking about it too. So anyway, does that make sense?
It does. I note a growing line of people with questions, so let's, if it's okay, we'll move to the questions. First in line, please.
Hey, this is a question for Craig specifically. Could you talk more in depth about your timeline that you take for paintings when working with clients and studios?
I'm not understanding the question.
The question was about your timeline for doing the paintings for studios and things like that. Is that correct?
Timeline?
Yeah, you've talked about how you take a longer amount of time for the beginnings of paintings, and I was wondering if you could go into specifics of how long you're typically given for a painting and how you divide up that time.
Oh, how I divide it? Or it's actually something that I learned a long time ago at Art Center, and it had to do with research in the 60s with creativity, and that is having real playtime. I think they even invited second graders to design the new F-15 or whatever they were working on. And you know, that's an extreme form of non-judgmental playtime, and then at some point decisions have to be made. But there has to be some type of unconscious, very emotional period when you can react to things. and just do things utterly without judgment. And sometimes that's hard to do. And you know, as I said, when you're beginning illustrating, your skills aren't as high as you would like them to be. It's very difficult to give up on that when something works and your mind shuts down. And so yes, there is a period at the beginning where I really try to discard my first inclination with something and try to make it better, cleaner, and stronger. And I will go all the way through the process and start a painting like over again if I have the time, because I learned so much from the entire process that, oh, if I would have done that differently in the beginning, this whole thing would have been better, cleaner, stronger. So I'm always repainting things. You know, there's Jim Lee has generously posted tons of drawing streams on YouTube, many, many hours, hundreds of hours probably. And watching how he draws things has really inspired me, because he's very non-precious about it. And like he'll erase a hand like 15 times and just screw it up. And you know, that's beautiful to me that somebody, you know, I'm sure he is of a high enough caliber where he's secure enough in himself and his ability that he can draw a screwed up hand and know he's going to think he's a nub. There is that aspect to it, but just seeing somebody do something and just out, gone, again, 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 again. And the more you can learn about your subject, the better off you're going to be. I'm working on a class where the subject is the assassination of Franz Ferdinand right now. And I'm learning everything I can about the bicorn hat and how it fits, and the ostrich feathers, exactly where the assassin was standing, what was the street corner in Sarajevo, what kind of car were they in, were they alone in the car? I mean, all these things are really important to me, because if the more I know than I have in my RAM, then I can compose freely. I'm not always like, where's the reference? What did the wheel on that thing look like? I want to know it. I want to get everything into my head, and then I can compose, and then start to decide and design things. So that's another story. Anyway, I'm rambling, sorry.
Thank you for the question. Next, please.
Hey, this goes to anyone in the panel. For those in animation and illustration about to leave school, what is the best advice you have on like moving forward and becoming a part of the field?
Career advice. Yeah, go for it.
Especially for animation, like if you can make it out to some union actions, there's a lot going on right now, like get involved, because I think that's going to be like one of the #1 things that's going to help get us out of this situation, is organizing together, supporting like the new people, like, you know, finding people who can help you know, like, am I being taken advantage of? Like developing connections with people who will be able to, you know, affirm for you when a situation is right, and also help you call out red flags when a situation is not good, when people are not, you know, maybe taking advantage of you. I think that's really important.
There are some tables, yes, right on. There are some tables in the exhibit hall where the animator union folks are there, so you may want to check that out if you haven't already. Thank you for the question. Oh, did you have? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Jump in. I can add, since I did the same. I did animation and art. More in the kind of obviously do that, and also I would suggest show your work to as many people as you can, especially professionals. This is a great place if you can. Just be. People are very generous with their feedback. I've been asked many times. I've never turned down anybody. So definitely do that, and you get a lot of pointers like, okay, kind of trim the fat, get your best work, and if you have social media, do that. That really helps. Are you applying for jobs right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think events like this are great for that.
Okay.
Just the more people see it, the more you'll get the right people to see it.
Network laterally, not just vertically. Like find people who are in the same stage of life as you and connect with them too.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Next.
My question was almost similar to him, but I think in my case, I come from a more international community, so sometimes when you say unionize, it's not part of my reality, so I would like to see if you guys have any tips for people who are outside the US, or I don't know how you guys go about of a more international, like I saw Loish, I think you also work outside, and I wonder how that's possible, and if it out, I mean, with social media or without social media, because I also heard that there is other different alternatives, so I would like to know what would be those other alternatives and things like that. So thank you.
So alternatives for international artists and social media strategies.
Yeah, so I think it's a similar advice as what we just heard, like getting your work out there as much as possible, and not just to, you know, the companies you want to work for, the people you want to work for, but also like your peers, because they kind of like, you know, age into the industry as well, and that's where I found a lot of my work in the beginning. I think outside of the United States, you're very quickly looking at freelance work, so you have to look at it from, on one hand, a creative perspective, creating good art, but on the other hand, marketing yourself and looking into like good business practices to market yourself. So, you know, social media plays a role, but nowadays I think it is more valuable to become part of like more tight-knit communities, because social media is very much like screaming into the void right now because of the algorithms. So it's good to join Discord groups, it's good to join like, you know, sketch sessions with other artists, like find ways to meet people and learn about like the marketing aspect of running a business. So how can you get your work out there, and how can you not take it personally, you know, if things don't work out, because it's really important to just keep putting yourself out there even when you hit a wall, because it's your work, it's your business, so you have to stay, you keep your eye on the prize and keep going at it even if you're struggling to find visibility. Like just look at it as a marketing project, and also continue to always prioritize growing as an artist and not just catering to the algorithm or catering to what businesses want to see. Like you want to keep developing your artistic voice. So make sure that you, like in my case, compartmentalizing it, like having my creative needs and then my marketing and work needs separate from, like they overlap, but they're also separate from one another. That's what I can definitely recommend.
So, thank you so much. Thank you all.
I can see with the line forming that it's possible that we're not going to get to all of these questions, so I apologize for that, but we'll take as many as we can in the time remaining. So go ahead.
Hi, I'm a really big fan of how all of you approach color, whether it be more limited or more vibrant. I was just curious if you like limit your color palette or how you make your work look cohesive with the different colors that you choose for each pieces.
Limited color palette, and how do you make color decisions?
Color editing tools are so helpful for me. Like that's why I love digital art. Like I love going into the, I don't know if that counts for you as well, but just like tweaking the colors in the selective color balance, like just moving those little sliders around until it all starts to sing. That's generally how I approach it.
Thank you.
Yep.
No problem.
First of all, thank you all for being here today. My question is about illustrators who want to be to have works who could potentially be published, and what is the pros and cons of having an artist agent, and in an area of social media, what is the difference between building a platform primarily online where you can share your ideas that way versus having it published?
So you want to?
I could talk about agents. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, I think this was a compare and contrast between sort of an agents and a professionalized model versus building organically a following on social media. Fair enough.
I mean, I think they're both, like, I think both are great. In publishing, having an agent is just like having a wingman who already knows all these other people in the industry. Like I knew nobody in industry. Like in the industry, I don't know anybody who works at Penguin Random House, you know what I mean? But then having an agent who can be like, hey, you know, a trusted person who can pitch you essentially to people who trust them already. So your agent is a trusted figure and your agent trusts you. And so you kind of get trust by association with people who, you know, matter in whatever industry it is. There's agents for illustration, for publishing, for TV and film and whatnot. But then, I mean, I don't think that's a replacement for social media either. Like, they're kind of just like two different tracks of getting your work seen by the right people.
Other thoughts from anybody?
Not really on social media. I just don't know much about it. I think it is fascinating that I think the algorithms are now being prioritized toward paying members. I think that's what's happening. they want their $10 a month or you're going nowhere. And I've been losing Twitter followers. I've been like a good little boy because I hate social media so much. I've been posting away, and then my followers go, ooh.
That's because
Like,
they're all leaving.
They're leaving, yeah.
They're quitting Twitter.
Yeah.
Quitting Twitter.
Yeah, it's
oh,
not
X,
personal.
excuse me.
They're
Sorry.
birds with little X's in their eyes. Yes.
I just want to say thank you so much for you guys being here. You guys are amazing artists. But this might be similar questions to the ones before. But if someone wants to be someone who's an aspiring illustrator and wants to put their artwork out there, what would be the best way to get, like, I guess, recognized or having or sorry, I think or like getting your first client in like illustration industry? Like, do you putting your artwork in social media or like hiring an agency? Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. What's the best way to break in at this particular moment of weirdness in the business? Like, do you hope to get discovered, or do you hire somebody, or what do you think would be the best strategy for someone starting out?
I don't feel qualified to answer that one because it's been like ages, but maybe you guys can.
What do you want to do? Like, what type of illustration do you want to do?
I think like the kinds of like different kinds of illustrations, like book covers and like comic artists, like any kinds of illustration work.
In publishing, I think getting an agent is really helpful in this moment in time because they already have the connections. And you get agents through a process called querying, where you find agents, and you can do that by, finding artists who work in that industry who you respect and seeing who represents them. And then you can see if their queries are open, and you pitch yourself to them. And then, if you can find an agent, then you kind of have a built-in like ecosystem of people who would, want to hire for book covers and whatnot.
Yeah.
And if you're interested in doing comics, there are platforms where you can actually start to monetize as you're building your fan base and as you're developing your skills. So things like Webtoon and Tapas and stuff like that are good places, especially if you're just starting out. And it's a good place to, as these folks were saying, laterally network, because the fans you're going to get are the people that are attracted to the sensibility of your work, and then you can actually develop your craft as you're developing your audience. There's some interesting ones out there. I'm not sure if there's anything for more traditional kinds of illustration, but I know that there's a lot of people that have launched careers that way.
Yeah.
I can add can I add a little bit?
Yeah,
to
please.
that? I don't have an agent. That's like, I don't have that world of that connection. The way I do it is, if I want to do something in particular, illustrative, I would create like mock-ups of that and show people, or they, pitch an idea of like, hey, I want to do this. This is kind of what I'm almost doing the work beforehand to charm them and hope for the best. It doesn't work every time, but it's almost like portfolio building too. Definitely if you're doing illustrations, I don't know if you're in art school or animation school, but make it laser focused portfolio. Same with animation, if you're doing animation, laser focused reel. Because a lot of times people put everything and anything in their portfolio, and it's very difficult to stand out when it's kind of like you have everything. So if you want to do cover work, do a bunch of covers on your own time, and then people will respond to that. That would be my advice.
Very cool. I think we have time for maybe two more questions.
Thank you. Oh, all right. Well,
go for it, sir.
Sweet. Howdy, thank y'all for being here. So now that y'all are like big fancy artists, I'm so curious, what are y'all's like sketchbook habits or like study habits? Do you still like carry around sketchbooks with you everywhere you go and spend time, or do you just like commission, grind, like what are y'all doing?
Do you ever do art for fun?
Yeah, basically.
I do, yeah. I have my sketchbook everywhere.
Yeah, I gave a sketchbook tour earlier today.
Craig, dude.
I go through reams of copy paper, absolute reams. I'm always drawing. And I used to do life drawing, but to me that got stilted to have somebody like nailed to a sofa. So now I draw things that are moving. It is more advanced technically to draw things that are moving. But it takes a long time, and when I was a beginning illustrator, I had no idea how people did that, but now I know, and it's so much better to draw. Like I like to stand in line at Costco, and the person standing in front of me is 2 feet away. So I'm looking right across at the back of their head. I'm looking right on the top of the balls of their feet. And just the way that those shapes go is so neat. Because, ordinarily it's an isometric view in life drawing, unless you really take pains to make it different. But yeah, I draw all the time.
Do people ever like catch you sketching them? So I'll leave, I promise. But like,
yeah, do people ever like, what are you drawing? Are you drawing me?
Yeah, I've had problems with. Yeah, I was drawing this 17-year-old girl, and the dad was like sitting right behind her, and he saw me, and he definitely locked eyes with me. And also given just the I think the higher level of distrust in the culture, there's probably, I just give if there's a problem, you just give it to the person. That usually disarms them.
thank you.
So we're going to have to take one last question, and then I want to give the panelists a chance to talk about where they can find their latest work and projects. So, sir, no pressure, but you're bringing us to an end here.
Hi, my question is for Loish. I'm like a really big fan of yours, and I especially love like how you do textures. And I was wondering if you have any advice, because like how you're able to translate it into your style so well. If you have any advice on how to like see textures in your own way and like how to transform them into your own style.
Could you repeat it one more time?
Yeah.
Could you repeat it back to me?
So how do you see textures so that they come through so clearly and vividly in your work?
The textures.
Textures, yeah. Is it?
I don't know. I feel like my work is lacking texture, actually. I feel like, I don't know. What do you mean exactly? Could you elaborate a little more?
Like I see your like studies on Instagram, like how you like do like sketching like wood or like water and like making it look so fluid, and I'm wondering how you do that so well.
Yeah. So what I love to do is like when I'm painting textures, I want everything to be like hand painted, because I feel like that brings everything together. And what I like doing when it comes to like more detailed kind of surfaces is like I think about it layer by layer. So I think about that base layer, right, where there's just like some color variation, and then I add like a sort of middle pass of detail on top of that, and then I'll do like the final bits at the end. But that's generally like how I approach anything in my illustration process, is to really start with like the simplest step, like the most basic step. And when I'm starting out, I also start at a really tiny size, and then I'll just like gradually start adding the mid-level of detail and then go to that final level of detail to the end, because it kind of makes it less overwhelming to begin with. Yeah, so I really like to break everything down into simple, digestible steps. So yeah, that's generally how I think about creating.
Okay. Thank you so much. I love your art so much.
Thank you very much. And I'm sorry, I don't think we're going to be able to get in these last couple, because I do want to give the artists an opportunity to promote either your latest project or where you're going to be at this show, or if you have social media. Start with Craig.
I have 2 classes planned. You guys got to tell me if you think this is a good idea. I studied industrial design at Art Center, and I did an internship at Ford, and I probably know cars and how to draw cars better than anything. Better than I know how to draw anything else. But my work as an illustrator, I take that familiarity and expertise with automobiles, and then combine that with my illustration side of it, and I have an interesting take on cars. I believe cars are like the human body of the manufactured world. You see them every day, you're sensitive to their proportions, but I see a lot of illustrators struggling with cars. And so I would do a schoolism class on how to draw cars from the perspective of an illustrator, how to draw, just how to familiarize yourself and draw, and by extension, hopefully, you'll be able to draw manufactured objects better. So I haven't started it, but it'll be coming out real soon.
Quick round of applause here. How many people would sign up to hear Craig teach them how to draw cars?
Okay. And then I do have a class where I'm going over a very specific illustration assignment, that assassination the Star Wars one. That's something I'm doing on a different platform, but that should be coming out in the beginning of New Year, and I'm working really hard on that. And it's very specific, but I want to show that you can do many, many different things with even something that is extremely specific, because the whole point of the class is to get beyond that falling in love with the first idea problem, which I see as a real difficult thing to do.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Eliza, where can folks find you and your work?
So I'm here with Superani at 1:15. That's my table. And other than that, I have, let's see what I have. I have a class that I'm going to shoot for Proco in December. It's going to come out, I think, next year. And then I have a super secret project. I just have a space now, so I'm excited to share more about that on my social media. That's not me.
That's not
okay.
you. But what is your handle on Instagram for
It's Eliza, spelled Eleeza, which is the pronunciation of my name.
Eliza
That is me.
on Instagram. Loish, what's up?
Yeah, I'm mostly focusing on my Patreon. So you can find me at patreon.com/Loish. And I've also been working on my newsletter lately as a kind of alternative to the social media noise, and I'm having a really good time with it. It's been super fun to connect on a deeper level, really. So my newsletter, loish.net/newsletter, and my Patreon page. And if you are a newsletter subscriber or a patron, I have a sticker for you. So just come say hi and tell me the secret password that I shared with you guys earlier this week. But yeah, those are my main things that I.
Are you tabling at the show, or are you are you doing other panels at this event?
Yeah, I'm doing a panel on Sunday, and I'll be doing hopefully a signing session tomorrow morning. So you can find me there.
Awesome. And then finally, Devin, where can we find you and your work?
You can find me on pretty much any social media platform. It's Devin with an I, ELLEKURTZ. Yeah, I'm working on books mostly at the moment. My first book, The Bakery Dragon, just came out. So if you have a 4 to 8-year-old, maybe check it out.
No, it's nice for all ages.
Yeah, all ages, right?
Ages,
Yeah.
It's a beautiful book.
Oh, thank you. What else? I don't know. I post a lot of videos on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram. And then I mentioned it earlier, but if you're into watching process breakdowns, I'm going to get back into that next year, where I on my Instagram story, I just break down my full process from beginning to end. So yeah, check back next year. Those are starting up again.
Awesome. And I'm at Rob Salk on The Bird and other assorted places, and you can find my writings on Forbes and Wired and Publishers Weekly and ICV2 if you're into comics. Let's have a big hand for our awesome panel of illustrators.